When I was a teenager, me and my friends used to play a lot of dare games. My hometown is small, suburban, great for young families or old people, but agonizingly dull for teens. So, as you can imagine, we had a tendency to take things too far. My friend Tom almost got hit by a train when Sophie dared him to dash across the tracks. Jess was sick for weeks after drinking from a stagnant pond we found in the woods. Our competitive spirit was stronger than any sense of self-preservation, and each time we cheated death, we were only driven to try something even more stupid. This is going to sound weird, but one game we like to play involves stalking random strangers around town. We would pick a random person from the crowds in the high street and follow them as they went about their day. Sometimes, we'd catch them doing something weird or borderline criminal, but most did no more than visit a few shops before getting on a bus home. The fun was mainly in the danger of getting caught. We never did though. In fact, we were starting to get bored of it by the time the story I'm about to share took place. We always followed at a safe distance, making up funny stories about the clueless victim's life and personality. I mean, really, how often do you turn around to check if anyone's following you? You'd never think to, right? One day, it was just me and Jess hanging out in town. She suggested we play, and I reluctantly agreed. I told her to choose our target. She looked around, then smirked as her eyes fell on the perfect candidate. Let's follow old Mags. What? No. That didn't feel right. Even though none of our targets ever discovered what we were doing, we had an unspoken agreement not to follow anyone. I don't know, vulnerable. We'd seen this man around town plenty of times, just stop still and staring into space, or aggressively rattling a door handle a minute before a shop opened up for the day. Definitely mentally ill. In a small town, you tend to see the same people around on the street, and boredom brings out the worst in people. All of the local drunks and unchecked ill had dumb nicknames that all the locals used, so typically cruel. He was called Mags because he looked like a maggot. He had a face that made you double take, then look away embarrassed. I never could tell if he was deformed by some genetic condition or just incredibly ugly. He was right on the border between ordinarily unfortunate and categorically wrong. His whole head looked stretched out. His beady little eyes were 2 hand widths above his thin mouth. His thin cranium towered way too high, and his skin was an unhealthy gray-white. When Jess suggested I was scared of him, I was. I felt I had no choice but to agree to target him. We followed him for a few hours, while he drifted around the town, stopping and starting, then moved on suddenly, as if he remembered he had to be somewhere, only to halt on another street. He entered a supermarket, made a loop of the aisles, then left again. At one point, he cursed and tried to kick an unsuspecting pigeon, which made Jess laugh. I couldn't see what was funny about it. His actions were meaningless. It was all quite sad, really. Finally, he started walking away from the center. He's going home, said Jess. I wonder where he lives. I hope he doesn't live alone, I said. She ignored me. We followed him down a tree-lined road, past old terraced townhouses. I was somewhat satisfied to learn he lived in a posh area. We kept a distance of about 50 meters, as the roads were so long and straight. There was no risk of us losing him. "Oh damn," said Jess, as we watched him turn and walk up a garden path. "We got him." We kept walking, moving closer as he came up to the door. I remember a weird thudding as we approached. I couldn't decide if it was a vibration in the ground or the blood in my temples. Jess didn't seem to react, so I suspected an oncoming migraine. Max was holding a slip of paper, a missed delivery notice. As it happened, the postwoman was still within view, far ahead down the road. Clearly, he had noticed, because as we closed the distance and came within 10 meters of the house, he dashed back down his garden path and down the road to catch up with her. As I looked at the front door he'd left open, my head throbbed painfully. We stopped outside the house, and I knew what was coming. "I dare you to go inside." "Piss off, Jess." The postwoman's miles away. "You've got at least 5 minutes. Go in for 1 minute. See what kind of hellhole Max lives in. And you're in the lead. It's enough for you to overtake Sophie in the scoreboard." That made me pause. Sophie's lead had been untouchable since she flashed her boobs at one of our school's teachers. We all knew it would take something wild to get back into the running. I was young and stupid. I turned my mind off, walked confidently up the path, and slipped inside. The hallway air was heavy, with a light smell of paint. The absolute silence quickly settled my doubts. No one else lived here. It was an oppressive silence, without even a clock ticking or electronics humming. But the interior was mundane. There were discarded envelopes on a side table. The walls were a conventional off-white. The staircase had a decorative hardwood banister leading up to... Okay. There was the first strange thing. The top of the staircase was completely blocked off. The gap was stuffed with fabrics, bed sheets, cushions, clothing, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. It was jammed so densely, even air couldn't pass between floors. I knew Max wasn't right in the head. What could have possessed him to do this? I have no idea. The hallway to the right of the staircase ended in a door. There was another door in the wall right of that. The far door was ajar, and as I moved closer, a cool draft told me that there was a window open, somewhere within. In fact, the air was restless, displaced, in a way that didn't match the narrow room. I wish I'd had the sense to leave then. It had been long enough to complete the dare, but I crept on through the far door. The next room was pitch black. There was a chalky smell, and my steps echoed strangely at the doorway. I couldn't find a light switch, so I waited for my eyes to adjust. When they did, I felt sick with vertigo. I was standing on a ledge, just beyond the doorway. The floor stopped, and a deep pit yawned before me. I took in the details. Somehow, the normality of the room at my level made it stranger. White plaster ceiling, heavy curtains closed over a window. The walls were clean of dust and neatly wallpapered. But then, below the baseboard, where the floor should be, the world just fell away. Bricks and concrete foundation led down into darkness. How deep did it go? I dug through my pockets and found some loose change. I held a penny out above the dark and let go. It fell and fell, and I waited. I never heard it meet the ground, but as I strained my ears, the pulsing started up again in my inner ears. My legs started to shake and I clung tight to the door frame, picturing myself falling in, but I didn't move. I was dumbfounded by what I was seeing. The vibrations were messing with my balance. It was like I was affected by a sound, but one too deep to actually hear. My ears probed the dark for more information. There seemed to be a reddish tone to the blackness. Or maybe there was just too much blood swirling around in my sinuses. Then I saw something. 2 points catching the light. Wet, curved, reflective eyes in the pit. Someone was quietly looking back at me. I was determined to make out more of the face, but the eyes were all that could reflect light. I don't know how long we stared at each other. I can't imagine what the hell they were doing down there. Looking back, none of it makes sense. It's been years, and I want to dismiss it as a weird dream, but the memory is too vivid. I snapped out of the staring match when my phone started vibrating. Jess was calling me, which could only mean one thing. Old Mags was coming back. I stepped away from the pit and sucked in air as though coming up from underwater. Through the open doorway, on the bright street outside, was Mag's stark, stretched out face. His white forehead was glistening in the sun. It felt like my heart ruptured. There was one more door I hadn't been through, my last hope for escape. My hands trembled around the handle, but I managed to open it quietly and found myself in a living room, just as I heard old Mag's boots in the hallway. I went to the window, jumping at the sound of the front door slamming. The window was opened wide, thank God, and I hopped out into the front garden. I didn't look back. I jumped the wall and sprinted away. I clocked Jess sitting at the bus stop on the other side of the road, eyes wide but sensibly staying where she was. To bolt would make her guilty. I ran until I couldn't go on any further. Jess had no choice but to ride the bus away from the scene of the crime. She met me back near the center of town. Her expression was grim. We didn't talk about dare game points. She just assured me that I'd been out of sight before she saw old Mags come into his living room. I didn't want to talk about what was in the house, and she didn't push the topic. After this incident, the dares stopped.